Hello there, and welcome to this video. My name's Dan. I'm a Warhammer veteran of many years, and we're talking about wood elves. Going through their army list, what I reckon to that. It's pretty cool, actually. I quite like wood elves. They're an interesting. They've got such an interesting play style in that they're, you know, as you'd expect, very flighty. They're all over the place. They don't really sit still. Well, they can do. I suppose if you take an army of trees, then you know they're very flexible as well. They're unlike high elves. They do have a lot of toughness in the tree kin stuff, so they can actually be, you know, really good. Yeah, they're pretty good. I quite like them. Anyway, army composition, same as pretty much standard. You're allowed a Glade Lord or Spellweaver, so up to half on characters, up to half on special, up to a quarter on rare, at least 25% core. Again, a lot of tournaments, match play, sort of comp looks like you're allowed a maximum of 3 of any one unit in addition to all the other restrictions, and also allies are off in match play. But you know, if you're just playing friendly down a local gaming club, you know, it doesn't really matter. But if you're thinking about maybe going to a tournament or maybe writing a more balanced list, I'd bear those restrictions in mind, because that seems to be like what's commonly accepted as being like, you know, you don't want unit spam. Basically, it's not good for the game. So you're allowed 0 to 1 Glade Lord or Spellweaver per 1,000 points. So what that means in a 2,000 point game is you can have 1 Glade Lord and a Spellweaver, or 2 Spellweavers, or 2 Glade Lords. So it's not, you can't have 2 of each. It's the "or" word there is important. You're allowed a Treeman Ancient per 1,000 points. Like, I don't know what a list with 2 Treeman Ancients. I mean, they're about 400 or 500 points each. So, like, you know, that's that. If you had a 2k list with 2 Treeman Ancients, half your army would be 2 Treeman Ancients, and they're not that good. Like, they're not that defensive, so, you know. And then you got all the other characters, and the characters are cool AF. You've got to have a unit of Glade Guard. You can take a unit of Deepwood Scouts as core per 1,000. So if you're running a shooty list, that probably looks like a unit of Glade Guard, a unit of Deepwood Scouts, and 2 units of Deepwood Scouts in like a 2k list. However, you do have Dryads, and Dryads are pretty good because they're skirmishers, so they're -1 to hit and shooting. That's part of their defense, but their other part of their defense is toughness 4, and they have a lot of attacks, so Dryads are really good. Yeah, and we'll just go through all the units. So just to get the flavour of the army, let's flick over to the special rules, which are, you know, it's only a page. Unlike high elves who have 2 pages, wood elves keep it simple. So again, they've got the elven reflexes, so in the first round of combat, +1 initiative. Some models, basically war dancers, have talismanic tattoos which have a 6-up ward. Tree spirit is an interesting rule. It basically means that treemen and treekin and what are they called? The dryad hero basically can only join like dryad units, so the tree spirits sort of stick together. And then tree whack. This is cool. So a model with this rule may use 1 of its attacks, so it takes up 1 of its attacks. It can only do it once per turn during the combat phase. The enemy model must make an initiative test, and if the test is failed, they suffer D3 hits, with each using the strength characteristic of this model. No armor save permitted. However, ward and regen are allowed. So obviously that's good against stuff like lizardmen, or against Saurus anyway, who have like initiative 1 and undead. Great against them. Not so good against elves. They'll just dodge it. And they get a tree, so they can put a wood somewhere on the battlefield, which they kind of need, because quite a lot of units have like a kind of a, you know, if you're near some trees, add something. Should we talk about those? I mean, these are okay. The spells that they get, so essentially instead of the signature spell, so at the start of the game you've got to roll for your spells, you can swap one of your rolls for the signature spell of your Law of Magic or one of these. So these are like additional signature spells that you can take regardless of whatever law you've got. This one's okay, which is essentially you can... Oh yeah, and if you're a Wood Elf player, it's always a good idea before the game even starts to agree with your opponent what is natural terrain and what is not. Because a lot of your rules rely on essentially natural terrain. That's pretty cool because it's got quite a long range. So you can essentially teleport characters around, which is, you know, pretty good. Yeah. Is this one okay? Yeah, so if you've got one, because these are like in place of signature, you can't have Forest Walker and Tree Singing with like one wizard. Well, I suppose you kind of can if there's a magic item that allows you to roll from 2 laws, so that means that you're allowed to swap 2 spells for signatures, I think. So you could have both of these if you take that magic item. I don't think it's that expensive. It's like 15-20 points, something like that. So that might be an option if you've got like a level 4 wizard that you want to do that with. Because essentially you put like a blast template down, and that becomes a wood. So you put down your blast template, then you teleport your character from there to the blast template. Because essentially the other spell is essentially put down a blast template. This counts as a wood. Although, you know, if you're a Wood Elf player, you might want to get some spare blast templates and model them up as woods, which would look cool. Okay, so Glade Captains are your battle standard bearers. They're the only heroes that can be, which I'm a bit sort of miffed at, because like Branch Race should be as well, because if you're taking like a fully tree list, you've got to take a Glade Captain to be the battle standard bearer, which seems a bit weird. So Wood Elf Nobles are exactly as you'd expect. Massive ballistic skills, best in the game. You know, they're just fantastic. High ballistic skills are really weird because I'll just show you. Because you get like, you sort of get a reroll to hit. No, you don't sort of. You do get a reroll to hit. Where's the chart? Yeah, here we go. So if you've got ballistic skill 6, so basically the first roll you always hit on a 2+. However, you get to re-roll misses with a. So this one, the 2+ gets modified. So you get hit all these modifiers. The second roll does not get modified. So with BS7 models, you always get to re-roll your hits, but you need a 5 up to hit on the second roll. If you got a 10, you know this first one gets modified, so that could be like a 6 or 7+ really. But then you get to re-roll it on a 2. It's a bit kind of, it's interesting. So it just means that the higher ballistic skill, the more guaranteed you are to hit, really. They can take, okay, so I'll just explain this. Can I click that? Is that a link? Is that a link? No, it's not. 147. Yeah, it's probably good to, yeah, so the Asrai longbow is a pretty good longbow. It's got a 32-inch range, which I think is 2 inches longer than a normal longbow. It's got armor bane 1 and volley fire, so that's pretty good. You can upgrade to one of these weapons, so you'll see arcane bodkins and swift shiver shards most frequently, and probably some hagbane tips, but that's kind of situational because it's not a 6 to hit automatically wounds, which is pretty good because the strength 3. But then you don't get your armor bane, so you might see swift shiver shards in order to try and, you know, essentially get more hits and therefore more chances of rolling the armor bane. You can guarantee an AP of 2 with arcane bodkins, but actually multiple shots is possibly, yeah. You're not going to see moonfly shots and true flight arrows very frequently. Although, actually, saying that, true flight arrows you might see on the skirmishes, because quick shot means you don't suffer penalties for move and shoot, doesn't it? No. Yeah, you don't suffer penalties for move and shoot, so... which is annoying because the move and shoot rule means march and shoot. It doesn't mean move and shoot. Quick shot means move and shoot without penalty. So if you've got quick shot and move and shoot, that means you can march and shoot without penalty. I don't think anything has, but if anything has, it'll be in Wood Elves, right? So we shall see. So the upgrades for this guy are, are pretty, pretty much what you'd expect. You can get a Glade Lord up to have a ridiculous amount of shots. So you can take Swift Shiver shards. You can take. There's a magical bow that increases your number of shots you can make to your attacks characteristic. So that goes from attacks 4 to attacks 8. At that ballistic skill. Because it's the strength user, it's strength 4. So it's great. It's got the Arrow of Kurnos, so you got to be. I mean, it's not great, but it's strength 3 hit, no armor or regen. So your opponent adds +1 to the roll and rolling off to determine who takes the first turn. Wood Elves are perfect for an MSU build. Lots of little units just all over the place, just getting in the way, basically. So your opponent's probably going to get +1 to the roll anyway. So basically, at the start of the game, whoever deploys first gets +1 to their roll. So you're just giving them +2 to the roll, so you're more likely that your opponent's going to go first. But you kind of want that because they start out of range anyway, so you kind of want your opponent to go first. So you kind of want this to go off to spike it so that you go second. So your first turn is spent largely shooting. You got to deploy your person with the Arrow of Kurnos. So if the general is within one or more models, so actually if you've got a Glade Captain who's battle standard bearer, you can put both of them either side of the battlefield just to increase the chances that the general's within range. And then your general, so the general is your opponent, you basically just snipe him before the game begins, which happened to my Chaos Lord on Manticore with a 3-up save, 5 at ward, 5 at regen. My opponent rolled a 6 with this, and I failed all my saves. So it's you're a wound down before the game begins. Great. Oh no armor or regen. Yeah, so I failed my ward. Yeah. In fact, I think we didn't read that properly, and I did roll all my saves, and I still failed them all, maybe. But it's just funny. It's a great ability, actually, and again, like I said, it gives you more of a chance that you're going to go second, which again, as a Wood Elf, you kind of want to an extent. You're quick enough so that if you've cocked up on deployment, and if you've got an MSU build, you're going to be deploying last anyway, so you really do get to choose where most of your army goes, and you can react to your opponent. So you've got Wood Elf and Mages. Again, I reckon every army needs a level 4 wizard. But they're elf wizards. I mean, they're just what you'd expect. You can give them talismanic tattoos. I don't know why you wouldn't. 3 6 at ward, unless you're going to take a better one like the Amulet of Protection, which is a 5 at ward for 30 points. So, I love the sprites, and Wood Elves are great. Then you got Shadow Dancers, who are War Dancer heroes. They're weapon skill 8, which is I think Dark Elf Assassins are weapon skill 8, and Dragon Princes princes from Calador, Dragon Prince, whatever, their weapon skill 8. So this is higher than a Chaos Lord. Great. They can have Trickster's Blades, which is D3 extra attacks, or they can have a Spear of Luck, which is puts them on strength 5, AP 1 with armor bane 2, and Killing Blow. Killing Blow is amazing. I cannot, I cannot. It's because if you just spike it and you roll a 6 to wound, with his 3 attacks, you're probably hitting. If you spike it and roll a 6 to wound, you can just kill anything, pretty much. It's fantastic. So the spear, so in line with War Dancers, they've got Dancers of Luck as long as they're within the unit of War Dancers, and these are awesome. It's got Strikes First, Talismanic Tattoos, so it's got 6 at ward inbuilt. It's got Furious Charge, which means +1 attack on the charge. Evasive means you get to essentially fall back in good order, I think, before. Let's just check. Once per turn, when it's declared more fall back in good order. Yeah. So, you know, fall back in good order is roll fall back in good. And it's earlier. Fall back in good order. Fall back in good order. How does it work? Fall back in good order. Yeah. 2d6 discarded lowest. Yeah. So it's the same as charging basically. So you roll 2d6 and you say the highest is how far you actually move. You've got Waste Stalkers, which are like sniper characters. They're only ballistic skill 8, 7. I'd have thought they'd been 8 or 9 or something. But anyway, they've got this Hawkeye Archer ability, which you could. Somebody pointed out the other day. You could combine with the Ruby Ring of Ruin, so you get 2d6 strength all hits and just like snipe it, because it says can target any enemy character regardless of the usual rules for targeting lone characters. So you can snipe characters in units with this and the Ruby Ring of Ruin. It's great. Ruby Ring of Ruin is like a bound spell, so you know, it's not guaranteed obviously, but you know, 2d6 strength or AP1 hits on a wizard that thinks it's hiding within a unit. Yeah, I mean the model that it targets still will get Lookout Sir, I think. It should get Lookout Sir. So on a 2-up it's going to hit the unit, but still. It doesn't say ignores Lookout Sir, so, which is a bit weird, but because that's kind of what you'd expect. But so Treeman Ancients, they're pretty cool. So they are 265. They're pretty tough, 6 wounds and toughness 6. They're as tough as a giant. They've got full plate armor, which is, you know, pretty good. They've got regen 5, but they're flammable, which means you don't get your regen against flaming attacks. Same with all like tree spirit stuff. They've got tree whack and they've got timber, so when it dies it falls over and squashes things. It's got an okay ranged attack. It's only 12 inches but multiple shots, so ballistic skill 5, you know, it's probably moved, so the falls to hit. But that's, you know, strangle roots are pretty good. They're just short range, which is a bit of a problem. Because, you know, if you're in that kind of range, like, you probably want to be charging. I mean, I say that. It's only got 3 attacks, but I say only 3. But you've got your tree whack, which you could spike, I suppose. Yeah. It's AP2, obviously. It's got D3 stomps. Yeah, you probably want it to be... It's a level 2 wizard already. You probably want it to be... This can be your level 4 wizard in a list, basically. So you could have, like, 320 points for a Treeman Ancient. And get a really tough level 4 wizard. That you actually don't mind being in combat. You know, you'd want to... Can you take battle magic? Yeah, you can take battle magic. So, like, battle magic's pretty good because it's got a decent... assailment spell. So assailment spells are really good for Treeman because you want them in combat, so you want them casting as many assailments as possible. Yeah, hammer hand. So this basically means if it casts this 2d3 strength 4 hits with AP2, so that like massively increases its potential. Also, if you get Spectral Doppelganger, I mean, obviously you can take the Lore Familiar for, I think, 30 points, so you can just pick your spells. But this is an assailant that suffers 2d6 hits, so you could hit them with 2d6 strength 5 AP2 hits in combat. So that's, you know, probably what you want to do. Branch Wraiths, yeah, I mean, they're okay. You know, you can. It's a level 1 wizard. It's pretty tough, you know. They're alright. You've got the mounts that you'd expect. Great Stag is Armoured Hide 2, so that's like double barding. which is pretty good. It's got an impact hit and a stomp, so great stags are cool. The models, the old models are awesome, love them. You got a unicorn, which is, you know, alright, they're quick. Unicorns are very quick, so move 10 is, you know, pretty good. It is a monstrous cav, but, like, you know, it's got armor bane and barding and blah 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 blah. This is pretty cool. So if you're on a unicorn, your opponent's got to take a leadership test before trying to hit you, and if it fails, only 6s will hit, which is awesome. Warhawks are pretty good as well. They, you know, they give you an extra pip of toughness, which is fantastic. And fly 10, they've got the evasive thing, they cause fear. Feigned flight, you know, which means they can essentially flee from a charge and automatically rally at the end of the flee, so that's pretty good. So essentially what that means is you can pick the combat that you get into. So you got your Wood Elf Archers. I mean, Glade Guard are great, like BS4 with Asrai longbows. They're pretty cheap at 11 points, I think, for what they do. I mean, they've got no armour, but they don't really need it. You can give them fire and flee, but, you know, they don't have feigned flight, so they're still fleeing at the end, I think, is how... Fire and flee. 169. Making its flee roll. Yeah, it doesn't say it automatically rallies. Whereas feigned flight is here if it chooses to flee or fire and flee, so it needs feigned flight and fire and flee in order to automatically. So if they do fire and flee, they're still running at the end. So you need to have a character nearby to have a go at rallying cry. In fact, do you have rallying cry? I did notice actually. I can't remember who it was, but somebody, they do have rallying cry. That's cool. Yeah. So you get a double. That's a command, so it's in the command phase, so you rally people before movement, so that's pretty good. And then you got Eternal Guard, who they can have drilled and veteran, which is great. I mean, it makes them 15 points. Shields, you probably want 16 points. They've got the old elven martial prowess, so if they're flanked or slapped in the rear, they still get fighting extra rank with the Asrai Spear. Asrai Spear is basically a thrusting spear with AP 1. So if it's charged in the front, it gets +1 initiative. Yeah. And it gets fighting an extra rank, which is pretty cool. Wildwood Rangers are the dudes with the big axes, I think. Yeah, Ranger's Glaive, which is... like most elves, they seem to have this ability where they've got great swords that don't strike last. And also, if they're essentially targeting monsters, they're immune to psychology, but if they're targeting monsters, they're going to chop it down. They get extra attacks and multiple wounds too, which is great. +1 modifier to a maximum of 10. I don't know how you're going to get from... and where's the other 9 coming from that would... Anyway. Yeah, but they're pretty good. I think 15 points. Light armor and shield. They're going to go down quick though. That's the only problem, because toughness 3 and light armor and shield. So you need to make sure you get them in combat, and they don't have feigned flight and stuff like that. So they do move through cover though. So maybe, I don't know. They can't. They're not drilled, are they? No. So you can't. The reason I'm looking for drilled is that you can essentially deploy drilled in like a marching column, do a triple move on your first turn, and then on the second turn you can charge while you're in marching column, because drilled means you get a free like reform before you move. So it doesn't say before any, you know, before a move in the remaining move phase. Before it says before moving, so that's before a charge. So you can march up loads and then immediately reform and slap somebody. Which is again why with like Chaos, I think you're just going to see Chosen. You're not going to see any of the generic Chaos Warriors because they don't get drilled, whereas Chosen do. Anyway, and then you got the War Dancers, They're, you know, extremely fragile, but they hit pretty hard. They've got evasive, so they can run away from shooting, basically. They've got loner, which means so did the War Dancer hero blokey. So, you know, loner basically means you can only be joined by other loners. And talismanic tattoos, strike first. That's strike first is great, which means they're initiative 10. So, you know, I say they're fragile because they do. So they do one of these dances. So when their combat is chosen, they go, right, well, I'm going to do whirling death, and all my attacks become AP2. It's great. You can give them additional hand weapons as well, so that's like loads of attacks. Or you can have an extra attack, so they go up to essentially 3 attacks. Furious charge means you get a +1 attack on the charge, so you could be up to 4 attacks each, which is great. 4 at ward is not to be sniffed at. You know, I said they're fragile. They're now not. And the Woven Mist -1 to hit. So if you got an opponent who's like, you know, skeletons or whatever, you know, they're already hitting on 5s, you can make that 6s, which is probably better than a 4 at ward, to be honest. But then you got your Way Watchers, who are like better versions of Deepwood Scouts. They can have ambushes, vanguard, veteran. You know, you can kit them out with all the rules. I mean, they've got scouts, so I don't know why you'd want vanguard, because you can't you know, deploy them. Scouts means you can deploy them anywhere on the table, so like it's probably your last deployment choice anyway. So getting a free 5-inch move is not that great. Veteran's awesome because that means you can reroll all your psychology tests. And ambushes means you can deploy off the table and bring them on later. I'd be tempted to take ambushes, to be honest, because having a little unit of Way Watchers, like 5 of them, that can just pop into your opponent's backfield, like especially if they've got war machines, these could be pretty nasty. Yeah, especially if you're going to do that, you want Hagbane tips, weirdly, because, you know, you want those 6s to hit. Because if you're shooting war machines, right, your war machines, when you're shooting war machines, you shoot the war machine and not the crew, and the war machines typically have high toughness, so you want those auto wounds. Again, Dryads, like I said, this is where you get your toughness. So the toughness 4, they have only got light armor, so they're pretty bad at that. However, they do have regen 6, they do have skirmishers as well, so they can deploy in skirmish, meaning they're -1 to hit in shooting. And in combat, they slap pretty hard because they've got lots of attacks. And they've got magical attacks, which is pretty important because there's quite a bit more ethereal than you'd imagine. Some of it coming from spells. Treekin are just big versions of Dryads, basically. They're monstrous infantry, more wounds, blah blah blah. They do have tree whack though, which is pretty cool, and that's like 1 tree whack per model. So, you know, doing extra attacks at strength 4 with no armor save is pretty good. And they got armor bane too. So I quite like, you know, I can see a place for this in any list really. Glade Riders are, you can give them drilled, but like the problem is they don't have evasive. They do have fire and flee, but then they don't have feigned flight, so they're still fleeing. I mean, leadership 8's not a massive problem, but, you know, it's just, I don't know. I don't know what they're for. It's like, I was looking at Illyrian Reavers, and it's like, what are these actually for? You know, they're light cavalry, I suppose what they're, you know, but, I mean, the difference between High Elves and Wood Elves is that Wood Elves have Sisters of the Thorn, which are like, Glade in terms of their battlefield role. They're like cavalry, but they're so much better. They've got, you know, fire and flee. Did they have fire and flee? They did have fire and flee. Yes, they got fire and flee. They got the swift stride and all that kind of stuff. They have got poisoned attacks, which means their Blackbriar javelins have poisoned attacks. You know. Which is pretty good, which has move and shoot and quick shot, so essentially they can march and shoot without penalty, which at ballistic skill 5, you know, with poisoned weapons, they're very, very good. They can move 16 inches. So they've got an effective range of 28 inches, you know. Which is just fantastic, really. And they have fire and flee, so they can essentially get into, you know, the one thing they don't have, which makes them... But they do have fast cavalry and open order. So what that means is you can move them your 16 inches and you get a free pivot at the end because of open order. And fast cavalry means you get your free pivot after you've marched. So they're just fantastic. They've got all the rules that they need to do what they need to do. And they're not a wizard. They've got a 4-up ward, which means they're super, super tanky. You know, their lack of armor doesn't matter because they've got a 4-up ward. There's nothing. I don't know that there's anything in the game that negates ward saves, apart from maybe a Skaven weapon, like the Skaven Sword of Mega Killy Nagash thing. I think that one might ignore wards, but you know, so they're always going to have this 4-up save, and they're just so good. And they get a bound spell as well. So if you've got your full complement of command, it's cast with a power level of 2, and they can pick. I mean, from battle magic or elementalism, you know, you can yeah. They got Wild Riders slap so hard, like, you know, that the problem is they've got Frenzy. I say that's a problem. I mean, they do cause fear, so they ignore fear anyway, even when they're not frenzied. But that means that they're just not subject to psychology until they lose a round of combat. The problem is they do have to charge if they can, and with movement 9, you know. But what if you do have like a unit here and a unit here, you can just sort of slightly block them with like Sisters of the Thorn or whatever, because remember you only get like one wheel before combat, before a charge. So if your opponent is like over there, you've then got to wheel to get out past, and then you can't actually connect with them. So you can block their charges pretty easily without blocking their line of sight. So yeah, and they just hit so hard in combat because they've got Frenzy. They get an extra attack, so that's attacks 2. They've got Furious Charge, which means up to 3 attacks. 3 attacks, Weapon Skill 5, Strength 5, AP 2, Armor Bane 1. Oof, they're so nasty. They do die really quickly though, because they've only got light armor and shields and toughness 3, so they just fade away really quickly. But they're proper Wild Hunt type stuff. Great. Warhawk Riders have a lot of utility because they fly around the battlefield really quickly. They've got fire and flee. They've got feigned flight, which is important. So you charge them, they're going to shoot you. They're going to run away 3d6, and they're going to automatically rally. So it's going to be really difficult to get into combat with these guys. They pretty much pick where they go, and they're just going to flap around and just charge block. They're pretty tough, 2 wounds and toughness 4. They don't really have... do they have armor at all? No, they don't have any armor. So, you know, a magic missile and they're all gone. So, again, like, you know, most elven stuff, you've really got to wield them very carefully because they're very fragile. And then you got Forest Dragon, which is pretty cool. It's, you know, it's... yeah, it's got a similar profile to like any other big dragon, really. It adds toughness and wounds to your main character. It does have this soporific breath, which like makes people go to sleep. No armor saves, but you get ward and regen, strength 2. So that's pretty good. But again, you probably want it to be in combat, don't you? Great Eagles, they're good as a mount, but like I don't know what they're for. They've got 3 attacks, so basically they've got 2 claws and 1 beak, so they've got to use, you know, their beak and then 2 claws separately because it must make one of its attacks with this weapon, which is Armor Bane 2 and Multiple Wounds 2. So, I mean, Serrated Maw, it's a beak. It's not a serrated maw. Anyway, you wouldn't describe a bird as having a maw, would you? You'd say a beak. Anyway, You got Treemen who are like Treemen Ancients, but slightly worse. They got 1 fewer wounds. You know, but they're still pretty good. 215 points. You know, if you're taking like a wood heavy list, these are your rare choice. So, you know, it's 430 for 2. That's your rare done. Lots of stuff can take forest spirits. Like I think most of the characters can. Blight of Terrors is amazing for like a little, you know, because if you put like a little spellcaster in a unit of archers, your opponent's got to take terror tests, if you know, so he can, or I suppose, you know, making, yeah, what could you use that for? Terror is quite useful because whenever you declare a charge with a unit that causes terror, your opponent has to take a leadership test, and if they fail, they panic. So that's pretty good. Don't quite know how to maximise that. I guess like you could put that on a character that's going in the Wild Hunt. Muster of Malevolence is okay. D3 Strength 2 hits with Armor Bane 1 if Noble, or you might want to take that on that Noble if you gave him like, you know, 8 shooting attacks, because you're probably going to get a hit. -1 weapon skill and -1 initiative isn't that good because you're high initiative already. So this only really works against other elves, basically. So -1 weapon skill again is okay, but it's not -1 to hit. Now this Annoyance of Netlings is great because this is -1 to hit, but only in a challenge, which I'd argue is better than Mischiefs. But Resplendence of Luminescence is pretty good because it just gives all the unit magical attacks just for 10 points. That's pretty cheap. So again, if you're going to put a wizard in like a unit of Glade Guard, then you know this is pretty good. You definitely want to do that. Again, 10 points to, especially if you've got a big unit of Glade Guard, you know. Because also there's rules that like magical attacks negate wards and regen saves and stuff. So yeah, magic weapons. You've got a super killy spear thing with killing blow. You know, 3+ always wounds. It's pretty good. I quite like it. Yeah, I suppose strength of S doesn't really matter because you've got killing blow, so 6 is to wound, just like auto kill, whatever. Blades of Lurk are alright. Reroll failed rolls to wound. They're like normal war dancer weapons, really, but like reroll. I mean, you want the spear anyway because it's like. I mean, when you're looking at the war dancer hero, you know, you want his spear anyway because of the killing blow, really. Bow of Lauren is wielder can make attacks characteristic, so it makes as many shots. So this is the one that you give to the Lord if you want 8 attacks. Because you give it that, you give it quick sliver shards, which then becomes multiple attacks. 4 times 2 is 8, therefore 8 attacks. Multiple shots. Weapon with this special rule can either fire a single shot or it can be fired a number of times, as shown in the brackets. Multiple shots are fired each to hit roll. Multiple shots. Actually, does that work? Because this says may make a number of shooting attacks. Can either fire a single shot. So is a single shot a single attack? It might be 8. It might just be 4. Actually, it might negate multiple shots. I don't know. That needs a bit of clarification. I suspect 8 because, you know, 40 points. It's quite expensive for just like an additional 3 shooting attacks. I mean, they are strength 4, armor bane 1, and magical. So, you know, pretty good, sort of. As Yendi's Bane. Yeah, don't do that, because it might go wrong and hurt you. So you know, you don't have that many wounds and you're pretty fragile, so that's not good. Not a good idea. Helmet hunts, you know, they are really leaning into like the wild hunt thing here. I mean, you can, you know, massively lean into it if you want to. It's +1 armor value, so that's pretty cool for an army without much armor. This is awesome, because so your model strength cannot be modified by any weapon. However, strength of other things cannot be modified either. So like for a small like wizard character, whatever, it essentially makes them pretty tough. Especially like if you're in like a little, yeah. Especially, I think that's really cool on a dragon. Because, you know, you're on a dragon. Dragons are already pretty tough and pretty strong. So the fact that you can't modify your strength is okay. Especially if you're taking like Spear of Twilight, which actually strength doesn't matter because it always wounds on a 3. So you could have Spear of Twilight and Miracule's Locus. Yeah, so that's 100 points for those two. Stick that on a dragon, that's going to slap pretty hard. You can take Glamour Weave, which is the same as like riding a unicorn, but without a unicorn. Just put yourself on a unicorn. Because you get loads of other cool stuff with the unicorn. Well, I suppose, you know, if you can't be mounted on a unicorn, you might want to consider that, but... Banner of the Hunter King is pretty interesting because there's a lot of units that are quite quick that you can then take this with. So yeah, that could be useful. +1 combat res if you're within 6 of a woodland terrain feature is okay. I mean, the battle banner is 20. So you could have that and a battle standard bearer with this. So essentially you got banner, battle standard, that, and war banner or whatever it's called, the 25.1. So you could have +40 res just from banners, which is pretty useful. Yeah, these are sort of back from like historical reasons. They're not great. This is a single use like stone thrower thing, which is like, it's okay, but this is pretty cool. Oaken Stave, because it makes your dispel range goes up again. If you got like a level 3 or 4 wizard, you've now got 27-inch dispel range, and you get unlimited dispel scrolls, which is excellent. It also means you'll almost never be outclassed in the art. So basically when you make a dispel roll, you roll 2d6. If you roll double 1, you're said to be outclassed in the art, and then you have to roll on, it's basically like a dispel misfire, miscast, so bad stuff happens. If you can do this, makes it incredibly unlikely. Like 1 in, what would it be? 1 in 216, isn't it? Yeah. Once per turn, that's pretty good as well. Once per turn, re-rolling a failed casting roll. It means that you're never going to miscast, basically, because the chances of rolling, you know, well, it's 36 squared, isn't it? Which is 1272. So 1 in 1272. If you've got your fairly unlikely. Yeah, we've looked at the weapons and that's it. So that's the Wood Elves. I think Sisters are great. They're fantastic. I think the Wild Hunt guys are fantastic. The characters are great. Yeah, I love my Wood Elves when I had them. I had quite a lot of those bowmen, and that guy. That model's just so nice to paint. It's brilliant. She's a bit of a pain in the arse to paint. That guy I've never seen before. I don't remember him at all. But obviously they've not done any new models. I don't like these. Like the yeah, I had a unit of those. Didn't like them. I think the banner kept falling over. It kept annoying me. But yeah, the Wild Hunt guys are fantastic. These, not sure what they're for. That's a cool model. That's like your Waystalker guy. There's some yeah, so obviously fighting the hordes of chaos. So yeah, that's the Wood Elves. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't really know what the Glade Riders are for, because, you know, I suppose if you've not got the points for Sisters of the Thorn, then, you know, you probably do them. But like, if you're buying an army, definitely model, because it's the same box. So Glade Riders and Sisters of the Thorn are the same box. So, you know, model it up as Sisters, because they're way better. But yeah, those are just my thoughts. You know, comment down below if you've got any comments. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll catch you again soon.